Well, why don't you take a quick second, Tami, to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background. You've done some incredible things for, I think, one of the best content marketers, social marketers in SaaS. But Tami, take a quick second. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, George and Tom, so much for having me this morning. I am excited to join. I am the co-founder of 31 South. We are a creative marketing agency working with both B2B and B2C clients across the US. Previously, I was the first marketing hire at SalesLoft and had the opportunity to see the early growth at the company and turned into a scale-up. So that was really exciting to go through Series A, Series B. I have experience in nonprofit sectors as well as corporate marketing and the startup world. Focus is really on experiential marketing, creating indelible experiences for our customers and clients that can truly make an impact, land them on the map and gain incredible brand traction and amplifying a lot of what they're doing tied to revenue processes.
Awesome. And I know you tell us a little bit about 31 South right now.
Yeah, we are working with some incredible clients to create magic experiences and truly amplify brands, where we are working with a company called QA Symphony, a great company out of Atlanta. We work with Tribe Kelly, and it is a fashion brand out of LA. We're working with Fancy out of New York, and a lot of different industries that span the gamut from B2B SaaS, which is my wheelhouse that I'll be talking a little bit more about, and also the B2C world. And what I really want to touch on throughout our webinar is how impactful the nonprofit sector is to storytelling and bridging that gap between just personalization and bringing the authenticity and empathy into what we're doing in communication that we're typically looking at our competitors in B2B about, but not necessarily looking at an industry that does this over and over again.
Awesome. Tom, how's it going?
It's going. It's a nice day in Canada, so it's a nice change.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You've been at VidYard for a while now. I've done a variety of different things. I know we met within the strategic, sort of channel relationship that we love that program that you have there. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your role and maybe a little bit about VidYard? I know everyone's really excited about video these days.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks, George. So excited to be here. Been with VidYard for over 3 years now, and I've kind of seen it from the early days, similar to, I guess, Tami, when you were around. Similar type story here at VidYard, and I've worked in the partner ecosystem and now as a solutions consultant, so helping set up whether it's the video strategy, the technical integrations, and helping really people piece together video into their existing strategies. So I think that's a point that I'll definitely want to touch on, is like where content can play a role in those different areas of the business, and why people should be reaching out to folks such as yourself, George, and Tami, to help use more video across deal cycles. And that's both on the marketing and sales side. So VidYard itself obviously helps in all those different places, and making sure that your investment makes sense, that you're doing, or your efforts rather are reflecting what you wanted to do. And if not, giving you those insights to help drive that future strategy. So that's the basis of what we do, and across a number of use cases from sales, marketing, support, and internal communications.
Awesome. Well, Tom, question. So, we as SaaS marketers or B2B technology marketers and salespeople too, I've been in sales and a nut, as Tami knows, in the sales tech, a huge fan. We talk a lot about stacks, our marketing stack, our sales stack. If you were to think about what your video content stack should look like today, what does that actually look like? What are the different components?
Yeah, I mean, I might come with a little bit of a bias for that question, but I'd say VidYard's a must across the business. But I think, less so than the stack. I think it's more the strategy that's more important when getting started with video. So when people come to us, it's really kind of one of two extremes. One would be, I don't know what the heck I'm doing with video, but my CMO or whoever's told me I need to do more of it. Or the other side of it is I've got some videos, but now my CMO is on me to justify the spend on this. We're trying to figure out our budgets, and I'm not sure what the future looks like for video in my company. So I think making sure you nail down that strategy first, and then you can use the appropriate technology to fill in kind of what your gaps are, whether that's people not landing on your videos, whether it's people not converting on your videos, and then you can go to figure out what technologies you need to fill those gaps.
Yeah, I think that's so important as well. We can, without that clear and concise strategy, as you mentioned, Tom, it's hard to have the tools and not execute on them properly if you don't have that, the bandwidth as well as the team that's all bought into what you're using as well.
Now, Tami, you've created, I mean, quite a few content strategies over the years. I know what you did at SalesLoft was absolutely incredible. How did you start to think about the role of video content as it relates to your overall content strategy? Now, we make videos, of course, and so we obviously we and make as much video as possible, host them on technologies like VidYard. But the reality is, how do we actually look at all the content we have to create, which is not just video, which is audio as well, which is static, right? Images, photos, etc. How do we start to say, okay, well, this is how I'm going to start to integrate video content into that larger strategy, and what does that actually start to look like?
Yeah, that's so important, and I think it's really important to understand what that strategy looks like. As marketers, we are so ingrained into just think about what we really like to do, right? And we tend to create things that we want to see without truly understanding what our audience is looking for. We try and dive straight into the solution before diving into what those questions are. What are we trying to solve for? So we really need to understand what that demographic is and the storylines that we're creating for. Where are these marketing videos going to live, and how are they going to exist in their overall sales cycle? If we're just producing content to have content because everyone else is doing it, that's not necessarily a strategy. That's because a very reactive campaign. And what I like to do is to divide video into 3 strategies. Bait, hook and reel, and the trophy shot. And I'll share this with you as well. But from the bait perspective, this is built out as to your explainer videos. So think of value prop videos, alliance marketing collateral, short advertising videos. And the goal of these videos is to get a conversation started between you and your prospect and your sales team. So really top of the funnel. This is the bait. Bring them in. Think of it as luring them in a little bit. Just get that conversation going. From there, we'll think of the second part of the strategy as the hook and reel. These are really targeted videos from a marketing perspective. Think about specific product videos for your SaaS products that really get more technical, get into the weeds, show how you differentiate your solution in the market. Again, you are really diving into what that differentiator is based on who you are talking to. They offer a lot more detail, and then of course they lead into more marketing collateral. Again, they don't operate and exist. They don't operate in a vacuum by themselves. They are all supported by every other marketing function. Again, the overall content strategy. And this is ideally, when you're looking at the hook and reel, this is to move your prospect through the funnel. And this is aligned entirely with the sales process and what your marketing and sales alignment looks like. From there, we'll go into, think about it, your trophy shot. What does this look like? These are long-form case studies. These are videos that really highlight your wins and your customers that are truly making an impact in the industry. They are proof that your company really kicks ass. They deliver great value. It's from product, service, so bringing in that customer success approach as well to not only sales functionality, the features, benefits, but also what happens once they close the deal. So really it is, when I think about video, those are the 3 different sort of strategy components that I'm looking at and where they fit into that, but as well as the overall marketing approach as well.
Awesome. And so and Tom, this maybe you can sort of add some color here. You know, when we talk about these different video types, right? And there's the one there, you know, Tami mentioned the video that is designed to kind of explain the value and the success of the customers, these sort of things. Are these like video case studies, testimonials, and how do you find the balance between these and who uses these within the organization?
Yeah, I think Tami, you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned sales and other portions of the organization using video. We like to joke here that only IT likes to read white papers, and there's definitely a place for them, but that's closer to the middle or the bottom of the funnel. So at the top of the funnel, I think, especially when getting started with a video strategy, it's important to consider, you know, who is the target audience? What does that buyer's journey look like through the website? How are they getting to this video? And what is the message we're trying to get across? So thinking, hey, can I articulate this in a more clean manner using a video? Am I going to capture their attention more if I put myself out there? You know, talking head videos aren't ideal, but I'd rather see someone's, you know, president of a company speaking in a short video that's, you know, 30 seconds to a minute and a half over a long-winded letter or explanation posted on a website. So that is that sort of hook and reel, I believe is the term you used, to get people to binge on your content and continue to look at, you know, whatever else you have on your website.
Now, your overall content strategy uses a couple or an omni-channel, right? Multi-channel, you know, omni-channel, whatever, right? And so these channels might be social media, email, maybe SMS with clicking through to landing pages. How do you start to understand, okay, well, here are the pieces in the workflow or in our drips. You know, we think a lot about demand gen and all these sort of best practices that demand gen has taught us. How do we start to actually integrate video into those various drips, understanding that maybe, you know, not every piece of content should be video, and you sort of alluded to this in a second ago, but how do I start to understand, okay, well, I'm going to start off with a couple testimonials or start off with a couple product videos, and how high of the value, production value, should we start off with? Because nowadays you have systems that allow you to do DIY video, WYSIWYG video, and then of course you can also hire a big agency to do a, you know, $100,000 video campaign, right? So how do you start to understand that distribution of content, and then how to actually drip it across all these marketing channels?
I'll share my perspective from a marketing standpoint, and what we're seeing quite a lot is that I like to think of content marketing a lot like a tree falling in the woods. If no one hears it, does it actually happen? And that's the same thing. If you're creating marketing collateral that is, whether it is long form in the form of a white paper or an ebook, guideline, handbook, whatever it may be, or if it's even a blog, and we're not distributing it or putting it in the right hands of the right people at the right time, it's worthless, and you poured a lot of resources and bandwidth into that. But if you're not distributing it to the right people, I think that's where you're really going to fall short right out the gate. And it comes down, and I think we talk about this quite a lot in the marketing standpoint, where there has to be marketing and sales alignment. And we talk a lot about it, but we don't ever do anything. And what I really think is important in seeing the distribution and the content that's being created is marketing needs a seat at the table during the sales meeting every week. And sales needs to convey and have that open line of communication. If marketing doesn't have a sales number attached to what they are leading and driving, does it even make sense for them to be creating content that not is directly impacting the people that they're talking to, the challenges that they are facing? And if marketing is not requesting sales recordings, they don't, how else are they going to know some of the objections that the sales team is reaching? How else are they going to know what product features that they need to really highlight in what they're working on? And so I think this is so important for marketing to understand what sales is really coming up against to create content for them to be able to speak to that, because I know marketing is typically in the corner. They thought of being this team that makes pretty brochures, plans parties, and doesn't have a direct influence on the revenue number. And as soon as marketing has that direct influence on that revenue number, and sales truly believes marketing is impacting that revenue growth, it's going to be stagnant. Nor is sales going to want to share that content because it's not aligned with what they're facing. And marketing is going to wonder why the distribution of the content has been halted. So as soon as you know that, look, I need this piece of content, the sales team needs case studies, or we need testimonials, let's dive onto that. Let's have that open conversation so that we know what they are looking for. And once that happens, then we create that distribution. But unless marketing has that revenue number and they're not sitting in a sales meeting, it's going to be really tough to do that. Tom, I'd love to hear your perspective from a true sales side, if that's the case as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I think that's why we're seeing some SDR teams roll into demand gen, or at least demand gen playing a bigger role on the inbound side of things, and even with the BDRs. It's important to have that communication, but more importantly, some sort of number on marketing to keep them accountable. And I think that encourages them to have conversations with the sales team too. So, you know, at VidYard, we've got a tool that allows you to share some of that marketing content on the sales side. And the idea there is that, one, the marketing content's actually being used, so sales is happy. And then sales is using something that helps get attention, helps better articulate value and save them time. So they're also happy with that. But what happens afterwards is that tracking piece. So they can both parties can come back, sit down and say, here are the results from our videos, good or bad. Here's the direction we need to go in next. What's affecting closed business? How did that work? And then you can have a more impactful conversation rather than, hey, I have a feeling that this customer story is going to really hit home. That's awesome. Like, I think it's great because most people will start there with just shipping out video wherever they can without any sort of strategy, again, kind of going back to that. But once you're able to track that, you're able to go back and iterate. And I think I see that the most is people trying something, tracking it, and iterating. And I think that's really important to have both marketing and sales involved in that iteration.
Now, we've talked a lot about the ABM and the role of ABM in targeting, segmentation, that kind of stuff at the top of the funnel, which marketing is driving. Are we saying that even, you know, we've looked at firmographic data and segmentation, these different parameters for, you know, creating ICPs and so on. Are we also saying that we're going to create a buyer profile or an ICP and then be able to map specific types of content that we feel are going to resonate the best with those stakeholders or those prospects?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope so or think so. I think that's where the strategic piece and helping out some of these organizations comes into play. I think most people are at a place now where they're using more video, but they're still having trouble as to mapping out where I should put that video. Even if they have, you know, awesome, super polished videos they've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for, they still truly don't know how to distribute that or use those videos. So they do require that guidance. And as people are starting to do more of that, those examples are being shared and people are starting to catch on to that. But I think that's the goal that we want to get to.
I would agree with that. And I think one question that leads on before that is the hesitation to actually create video and publish it. I think there's a lot of hesitation. What I've seen with a lot of different clients is that we know we need to do video, and the industry knows that that's something that needs to be going on. But there's that hesitation to, how do I even get this started? How do I even make this without this massive production? I don't have a huge budget. How do I do this? And when you have a full marketing and omni-channel marketing approach where you have to go to events, you have to create regular content, you're on social, you're doing your account-based approach where you sending them handwritten notes or cupcakes, whatever it is, and now you want to bring video into the mix as well, how do you truly say, okay, let's push this out, let's go? I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And George, I'm sorry if I've taken you off track here, but this is a question I hear over and over again. And no better person to ask than the expert. So Tom, how do you really encourage a lot of your users to just produce and get it out?
Yeah, I think we'd peel it back even a layer further at that initial conversation. It's, who are you talking to? If it's a head of demand gen or a CMO, like what are your goals for this quarter, for this year, and trying to figure out what those are, because the reality is you can attach video to any of those goals. And when it's not a video focused goal, I think people are less intimidated if they haven't done a ton of video, whether internally or outside. We're seeing about just over 50% of people having in-house resources, but those resources are slammed and then they have to go externally, and then they're intimidated. They're like, how much should I spend on video? Where should I put the video? And so on. So if we can attach that to a business goal, it's, whether it's, I have an event coming up, I need to put, 2,000 people in seats. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. Then we go back to the strategy and say, well, here's where you can launch a video 2 weeks before the event, promoting tickets, maybe a week before someone who attended last week. And then you're helping drive that strategy. And at that point, they're more comfortable because they would probably send some sort of communication out, and you're piggybacking on existing initiatives or initiatives that they're planning to do in the coming weeks, quarters, and so on.
Sure.
Now, I think that, we've looked at content calendars for a long time now, right? As content marketers and social marketers. I've actually seen quite a few that Tami has put together. Tami, when you think about, okay, I have blog posts, which you did such an incredible job building out that resource center and the content hub at SalesLoft. How did you think about the video tab? Right. And the number one, my first question is, how did you think about building that out? Now, everything from budget all the way up. And then the second question is like, how did you figure out sort of the distribution between, okay, this blog post is going to be a video, this one's going to be static, regular content, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think in the early days, it's just as you are in the early days of any growing company, is you don't have all the answers, nor do you have the time to have all the answers. So early days, it's tough to have a clear and concise strategy mapped out. But what I do think is so important is that you do, whatever you are doing, whether it's content, whether you are creating video or you're not, is to really map out what that strategy looks like and create this sort of internal playbook for yourself so that you can see that each step that you took to create your content calendar or whatever it is, that you can go back and refine it. It's a working document, and you want the entire team to be collaborating on that document and say, you know what, this first map stage of what we did didn't work, let's fine tune it. So I think in the early days, you don't necessarily have all the steps you need and the right idea of what you're doing. And so really and truly, when I look at it, is understanding what the bandwidth is that the internal team has and what does that look like for their growth and hitting those numbers. Now, are we producing a piece of content that is actually going to move the needle on any of our KPIs or the numbers that we are working on? How does that really influence what we are doing? And if it's not going to move the needle on some of those KPIs or knock out some of the things on your strategic objectives, that's not something you want to work on in the early days with very lean team. And so what I did was, and what I still do now, is really understanding consistency. And when you have a lean team, I try and look at what a flywheel looks like. So I'll create an anchor piece of content. So for example, from this specific webinar, what we could do then is have this anchor piece, and you have 5 different topics that you are covering, and you shared those 5 with Tom and myself. And what we'll do is answer each of those questions, and from those 5 pillars, you then have 5 pieces of content that you can produce for each of those. So then you can create a blog post for each of those 5, or you can create a guideline. So as we talked about building out the overall content strategy as one of the topics, you can then go out and create a playbook or a guidebook or a handbook, whatever it may be, to that one specific topic. From that long piece of content, you can create subcategories that then come into your blog posts. And from that, you can, because it is evergreen content for a significant period of time, you can schedule out different pieces on social. And then what you would then do is share those different pieces, long form content, short form as well, with your different teams, your sales team, and encourage them to then create their own influence on it and their own thought leadership. So say, hey guys, let's go ahead and post this on LinkedIn, watch it, and give your own personal perspective, how this is impacting what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and share that on LinkedIn. And not only really amplifies what they are doing in their own capacity as a salesperson, a marketing specialist, customer success rep, it allows them to dive in, share their own perspective as an influencer with content produced by the company, and that keeps on moving on. So not only are you building the company's brand, but also a thought leader out of your internal team. And so this creates this overall flywheel. From one webinar, you create all this content. And so that is typically how you can create this flywheel and overall content.
So this is actually interesting in terms of what I was referencing earlier in the notes that I sent you guys earlier about full versions videos versus snippets and smaller versions. Tom, I know you see a ton of different video all through your platform all the time. What are you seeing some of the best practices around this particular notion, which is your content, as Tami mentioned, the full versions, and then being able to, and that might be a full version video or a blog post that you now create a video of, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think, again, that was a really important point that you shared there, Tami, around splitting up that piece of content. You don't necessarily have to create 50 unique pieces right off the hop, but what you can do is work with your internal or external resource to split it up, especially if there's highlight pieces that you think people really respond to or reflect sort of the 5 key areas. For example, in this webinar, if George was to take a couple of the points and share those out after on social, I think that's an incredible way to make your video really work for you. Aside from that, I mean, in terms of what we see primarily people getting started with are like generic product overview videos, webinars, and then starting to get into, breaking out the product offering a little bit more, and almost like a funnel itself of, the top of funnel videos are the fun, kind of easygoing ones, but then people tend to jump right down into like, well, let's do webinars too. But there's a piece in between that specifically you can arm your sales team with if it's, a micro demo overview. So my team specifically, and I know Salesforce does a lot of this, we get brought in on technical conversations, we get brought in on demos or overviews for IT. A lot of that can be put into more micro content, recorded, polished up, make it look nice, add some music over it, and have the rep send that as sort of a first qualifying step before involving other resources. So video can help not only free up time, but help better articulate the messaging, especially if marketing is really particular about controlling how things are worded. I think that's a good place to kind of get started.
Well, it's interesting because you have a tool also, the Pro tool. I know it's gone through a couple rebrandings, but VidYard Pro now, correct?
Go Video.
Go Video.
Yeah, we've got a free version of that tool that allows you to do some of the sharing, but essentially that's the basic premise behind it is that you have access to a library, whether you're communicating internally and want to share videos, or if you're communicating to customers like in a sales role, you want to pull from that marketing repository of videos, you can do that and then track how that's working.
And Tami, as a marketer, how do you work with sales to be able to say, sales, okay, these are the types of videos you can do DIY. You talked about building brand and influencer type stuff, but how do you as a marketer sort of set the parameters of branding or what, as I mentioned, I hate to say go rogue, letting salespeople go rogue, because I think that's a little intense, but how do you actually work with sales to make sure that they have the freedom to create their own videos, whether that's DIY sort of stuff, or maybe even having some additional tools to be able to create this content without going too far off brand?
Sure. I think there's nothing worse than having a marketing person staring over a salesperson's shoulder, seeing what videos they're creating. I think that comes through trust in the teams and building that trust over time. I would hate to be standing over someone in the sales department saying, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, don't say that, that doesn't look right. That should be built in from the get-go with the sales and marketing teams, and I would really hope that that is the case between the leaders of both teams. What I think is really key, and what I don't think it's rogue when a salesperson is truly authentic and has empathy for whom they're selling to. So truly understand, I hope that they would, whether there's a fun intro video that really talks, that maybe spends a little bit of time on their LinkedIn profile, maybe they're a huge college football fan and there's a big game going on, and they really connect on that personal level if that's the intro. But I think what's really key is if the sales team is solving for their challenges rather than selling the solution, and they are creating video for that is really empathetic in their approach, I don't think that goes against any branding guidelines, as long as they are truly solving for what the prospect needs. From a more production standpoint, I would hope that the marketing team, when they are building out these more intense level productions, whether they are 15 seconds or 30 seconds, or even just less than 3 minutes, for whether it's a case study or testimonial, I hope that it's truly important that a marketing team equips the rest of the company really well for distribution. It's as simple as creating a few click-to tweets or creating a few snippets that they can share on LinkedIn, and really arming them. They have a full workload as it is every single day. It's nothing personal. Salesperson is just not choosing to share a video because they don't want to. They just don't have the time. So from a marketing perspective, to truly help the sales team is to create a few snippets, a few sentences at most that they can easily copy paste for their specific segment that they're targeting, whether it's a specific industry or if it is the SMB, mid-market, or an enterprise prospect. They can at least segment that to be able to share that with sales. So I think it's not necessarily marketing policing the sales team. That could be the worst possible thing ever that happens. But there has to be that trust and credibility among both teams for it to be successful.
Awesome. Are you seeing, in terms of content types, right? So let's say video content types, you know, on Instagram, I know a lot of B2B marketers are getting into Instagram now, and I think Instagram's great, right? We do Instagram a lot and actually get quite a few signups and so on to our content and our webinars, etc., from Instagram. Yeah. But you know, you're talking about it's actually really powerful. But anyways, you're talking about, you know, 15, 25 second sort of snippets, right? Of that work on Instagram. If you put a 2-minute video on Instagram, like, I don't even know if they support it, right?
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in terms of the type of content that's performing per channel in terms of size and maybe even production value? Mm-hmm. Like, we just started to offer these like animated GIF type things, right? Which do really well on Instagram, and they're just like the simplest darn thing.
Yeah. No, I really like that, and I think it's so important. And I really love what's happening in Instagram. And as I mentioned earlier, is that we need to start looking at the nonprofit sector to really understanding how they engage community on Instagram, on other social platforms, and they are absolutely killing it because they understand that emotional connection. No one loves to be sold to, no one. And getting all these promotional videos is really draining. Whereas if you get something that a non-profit sort of approach, which it's a little unique from a B2B perspective to look at that, but look at how the foundation of a video is created. What is the emotional context? How are they empathetic to the potential donor who would be your potential prospect? And it's interesting to find content that is quick, it's engaging, it's knowledgeable. It's knowledge-based content that it's educational. It's not being sold to. It's truly something it's lighthearted. It is. I don't have stats on this whatsoever. I could pull out a number and hope you believe me, but I absolutely have none of that in my arsenal. Tom, I hope you do to support this. But from a creative perspective, you know, we try new things. What we're doing at 31 South is we're creating some different snippets of videos that take on a brand perspective, where we incorporated an All Birds campaign, where we're wearing all bird shoes, we're driving a bird scooter, you know, we were wearing a Twitter shirt. So it was all this sort of integration between it, but none of them mentioned the brand, but it went through, it was funny. People would get the idea of what it was looking at. But it was lighthearted. It was fun. We want to take people outside of their day-to-day. We want to infiltrate their feeds when they're not at work, and just create a fun experience. It's just something fun. Yeah.
Definitely. I think there's a couple points there. You know, we've been bragging on sales a lot, so I'm just going to throw in something to pat sales on the back. In terms of thinking of social and enabling sales reps to also push video there, I think that's another place we can consider. Definitely Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn more so than Facebook, maybe for a sales rep. But as we're making these videos on the marketing side, also rather than policing sales, enabling them and encouraging them to push to social too. That can be a great way to build that top of funnel, whether it's, you know, their own videos, kind of selfie one-to-one human videos, as we mentioned earlier, or stuff that you've already recorded, sharing to their networks. And I think in terms of policing, what we, or at least if we look from a marketing perspective, one thing we should look at is how do we drive that content to our website or to our sales team, rather than what is the messaging sales is using. I think those priorities can get mixed up a little. And the reality is we're not looking at emails, you know, marketing's not reviewing with a fine-tooth comb. Did they articulate the value prop properly in their email? So there's no need to do that on the video side either for sales reps, but let's support them with, you know, social interactions, with their one-to-one human type videos, and then, you know, allow them to push to all these social channels and then track the effectiveness of that.
Yeah.
Awesome. And are you seeing any sort of trends around length of content per channel that, or even per page type? So like maybe an About Us page on a website might have, you know, a 2-minute, 2.5-minute About Us video that's comprehensive and speaks to our story. But then on the blog, you know, it might be, you know, deep, smaller snippets. Are you seeing any sort of trends around again, the length of content and where it lives?
I know we are. You know, people, I think, tend to make their videos too long. They want to get all of this information into the video because it's really important, because people need to know all of this stuff. And that's where going back to splitting up the videos is really important. In terms of an average video length, so we did a benchmark study this year and last year across all of our customers, and we're finding the average video length, which there's a bit of a caveat here, it includes webinars, is about 9 minutes long, which is significantly too long. You want to have that hover specifically for the top of funnel or ungated content somewhere between, you know, 1 minute and 2 minutes. And I think people are definitely on the higher end, if not, you know, those videos to be a little too long. If you're pushing to social, I would argue those should be even shorter. And I think, George, you've done a good job with that recently, keeping that nice and succinct, still getting the value across, but you're kind of teasing people with that content. And again, the piece that I think marketing should be policing is how many of those people are coming to our website? How many of them are signing up for the webinar? What action are they taking after watching that short content? I think that's really important. But just as a rule of thumb, initially sort of, you know, even 30 seconds to 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes for those top of funnel pieces of content, even shorter for social. And then webinars are fine to be a little bit longer, but I think it's Jay Baer does a really good job with his mini webinars. They're roughly 8 to 10 minutes long. Yeah. As a mid-funnel piece, having those, and offer that overview video too, which is like 30 seconds long. Here's what you can expect if you want to dedicate 9 minutes, and that becomes a more qualified lead.
Yeah. You know, I love that because we've talked a lot about that, and we've heard that as a recurring theme, which is top of the funnel, shorter videos. You're really sort of like developing or dating the prospect almost, just, you know, a flower here, flower there, whatever, right? Rose, I should say, or whatnot. I haven't done Valentine's Day in a while. Yeah, I like it too, you know, rose, right? But then later on, right, you don't want to show up with all the roses the first time, right? They're going to be like, whoa. But then you talked about content that maps to the middle of the funnel, and then content that is better at sort of the bottom of the funnel when we have relationships where maybe they're even beyond the sale. They're a customer, there's education content, there's, you know, longer form content, workshops, that sort of stuff that they'll be able to consume or ingest at that point once we've already built this relationship. What are your opinions, and what have you seen, Tom and Tami, around gated versus not gated video content, right? And do you there's a lot of really cool sort of nuances to video content, what we can do around gating, and even just pushing messages through, cross-promoting other products, other calls to action, that kind of stuff in the video player. So an example for everyone out there might be videos 90 seconds, but at 30 seconds or at 45 seconds, you might stop and say, hey, if you want to, you know, watch more or sign up to the newsletter or whatever that call to action is, that is actually happening these days through technologies like VidYard in the video player, right? So any best practices around gating versus not gating versus integrating best practices throughout the video experience?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the top of funnel content, again, if we start there, I think it's dangerous to gate anywhere before the end of the video. Marketers have this tendency to say, hey, we're offering something, we need to get something in return. That give-get doesn't happen, I would argue, until you're getting more towards the middle of the funnel. So initially, as you're pushing out that top of funnel content, you need to be okay with that being at least partially branding content, or that's the piece where you're giving. But at the end of that video, for example, putting a call to action, or if you'd like to speak to someone, or if you'd like more content, join our mailing list, you can put that at the end of the video. But then as you get towards maybe more middle funnel content, what you should look at doing is maybe using that gate. And I wouldn't gate at the beginning of that middle content, because in terms of qualifying a lead, either have that overview video, and that's where you can work with a video creator to overview that webinar and, you know, 5 quick points on what you can expect, and then put the gate at the end of that video. Or if it's the webinar asset itself, maybe give them the first 30 seconds of the webinar to 2 minutes of the webinar, depending on how long it is. And then if they fill out that form, again, they're going to be a more qualified lead because they understand what they're expecting and they're still interested. And anything beyond that, you know, anything more bottom funnel, anything more proprietary, if you're looking to secure or gate it, you can definitely do that. But I think my biggest suggestion would be at that top of funnel where marketers have that tendency to put that gate pretty early. Allow people to binge on that content a little bit, to get excited, and then the higher value assets, put a form in front of them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. I think that's so key. Marketers are very proud of what they produce and tend to want to hold on to it a little bit more. And I agree. Top of funnel, let it go. It also acts as a qualifying step in the process, so that if it doesn't align with what they're doing, they don't necessarily engage further. And so let it go. Let marketers produce and share what they're doing top of the funnel. And then, as you said, further down, and who it depends who you're working with, then tailor it a little bit further and put that cap on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Tami, we kind of kicked off talking about the content stack or the video stack. And from your perspective as a marketer, you have a marketing automation system that integrates into the CRM. You have a bunch of different tools. Now you have a video player stack, right? That's video, you know, the video marketing automation platforms, you know, a variety of different sort of categories that are now popping up. What is the video component of your stack look like today? What are those tools?
Yeah, so it's interesting. When we're working with a lot of different customers, we tailor it specifically to where they are in their business for scaling and different purposes that they have. So we necessarily don't have a an opportunity to do that specifically for ourselves. We do it for our customers. And so it's interesting to see VidYard is top of the list. But again, I'm very cautious in saying, here's all the tools you need, just go. You need these tools because that's what you're supposed to have. It's really important to have a team that can support the functionality of those tools, rather than just saying, okay, we're going to do video, let's get this, and just add it into your stack. If you are not prepared with that strategy, back to that again, it's really important to be able to do that with functionality, full functionality.
You know, let's say that there were, you know, let's say VidYard, there's a couple other players out there, Wistia, you know, 23 has a couple more sort of, you know, sort of marketing CMS type features. But if we're thinking about just getting started already, and, you know, in terms of serving video, what channel would you say, hey, this is the easiest channel to just get started? Maybe it's just video, get a video player like, with, you know, like a VidYard or Wistia or whatever. I have to throw in a couple so they know, Tom, we're not, that they don't know that, that we love each other so much.
Got to do your homework. I'm okay with
it. You know, but yeah, but let's say you just want to get started with a channel. What do you recommend, Tami, would be a good, easy way? Is it just start to embed videos from your YouTube, you know, until you get going? There are obviously, you know, restrictions around that. It's not really made for the B2B marketer. In my opinion, it's more of a branding. But what would be sort of some of those early things that we can deploy right away to get started?
Sure. For sure. So I'm a huge fan of Wistia in the early days. I think that's really impactful. It's helpful. You're able to use that in many different functions. That has been something that I've leveraged in the early days as well. They have a lot of great content for creating a studio that is less than $100, I think it is. So I really enjoyed Wistia. I enjoy looking at what a lot of folks, like, who do you really admire and who's doing great video? And this is a plea to marketers, to salespeople. Please stop thinking you're Gary Vee as you start creating your videos. No one loves that camera on LinkedIn with you standing like this all day long. Please, we've got to cut that out. Let's really focus on doing a few things. Like, don't dive in and think you have to be this Casey Neistat and you're producing videos. Start on a small scale and then learn from what you do. See what the engagement is, who bites, who doesn't, and then really build it out from there. So start small, but be consistent. Even if it's commit to one video a week or one video a month and do it consistently. I think that's the best way to start.
And are there any channels like email or social that you think are easy to get started?
I think it's easy to get started on Instagram stories. There's such little great digestible nuggets. You can spruce them up with location. It's really engaging. And I think that's a lot of fun to get started. People aren't looking for something very polished or refined. And so I think you can play around on that a little bit more. And then when you start getting into more video editing, you can start tailoring your videos specifically to that size and format, and you can produce and publish on there. But I think it's fun. You can get started, you can show a lot of behind the scenes on that, so you can get more comfortable in front of the camera, and it's easily digestible. People are a little bit less buttoned up on there. They think things are going to go wrong, so it's worth giving it a shot, and then move on further once you are a little bit more comfortable on Instagram. You know, share on LinkedIn. LinkedIn needs a little bit more video, and people are a little scared to do that. So just because there is a platform, it doesn't mean you have to be on there. It doesn't mean you have to be producing on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. You really got to find what works for your content.
So question, Tami, quantity or quality?
100% quality, 100%. You're going to turn away folks immediately if you have this hair-raising, really not great content. Take some time to build that content. You have one shot at getting folks to truly bite and catch on to what you're doing. And so I think it's really important to do that, but also don't become so scared that it's not good enough quality that you don't produce anything. There's a point of diminishing returns where you have to just get it out there.
Awesome. Tom, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here in a second. What tips, and you see so much great data, what tips would you give B2B marketers, content marketers right now about either getting started with video in a meaningful way using VidYard? You could, please plug VidYard. And then, so getting started, or if you have an existing strategy, beginning to optimize that current strategy to drive more leads, drive more revenue.
I think the overarching theme is to not be intimidated by video, regardless of if you're using VidYard or not. I think the piece VidYard adds is that element of tracking and understanding what that journey is for someone. So when you want to guide people from, whether it's social to your website or to a product page or somewhere else, just try something. You're not going to get it right the first time, maybe even the second time. Whether it's a polished video, if you're intimidated with user-generated content, make a video with your agency partner, make a video internally with your iPhone. And even if it isn't the best kind of shaky selfie video, at least you'll know kind of how that performed or didn't perform. You have to start somewhere. And I think marketers are still somewhat intimidated by getting started with video. So I would argue the easiest place to get started would probably be your blog, which probably has a bit of a lighter tone. And if there are some ums and hiccups or whatnot in the video, it's not the end of the world. And if you want to work with an agency partner or someone externally, that's when you can have those more polished videos, and you can push those out also either to your blog, to your social. But I think the bottom line is just get started, give it a try, and then see how it goes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. First of all, everyone, there's still a couple attendees on here who've been troopers. Thank you so much for being patient. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Tami, thank you so much for joining us. Tom, thank you so much. Tami, if folks want to follow you, learn more about you and your content at 31 South, what are the best social handles or maybe blogs to reach you?
Absolutely. I am local at last, and we are 31 South, so at we are 31 South. We love to engage on social platforms. I am quite active on LinkedIn as well. Shoot me a note. I'm more likely to respond through Twitter than any platform out there. So happy to engage, answer any questions that you have. And then our website is 31south.io.
And I love, that's absolutely true there, because we pinged each other recently on DM, and so DMs and Twitter finally taken up. Awesome. Tom, how about yourself? Best social channels, best blog, way to get in contact with you, and of course learn more about VidYard. We want people to use VidYard. We want people to use these technologies. Obviously, we're biased because we want more video content out there than ever before. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm probably most reachable on LinkedIn. So if you look me up, that's probably the best place. In terms of VidYard, just vidyard.com. We've got a pretty good blog with some chalk talks released recently, which are just tips and tricks on getting started. And then vidyard.com/go-video is the free tool that allows you to kind of get started and start toying with video if you're still kind of on the fence on producing videos. So I encourage you all to check it out.
All right, awesome. And for everyone, we're going to clean this video up a little bit, speaking of video, and do some repurposing and then send it out for everyone. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day. Tami, Tom, we got to hang soon.